Fit before safety creates heartbreak.
All around us, in every part of the UK, are skilled teams of eagle-eyed men and women, working alongside the police to keep us safe. They're the people on the front line, tackling the hazards that place us in danger.
As a family, life is so different. It's just absolutely heartbreaking just to know that he's not here.
They're cracking down on those who threaten our families.
My mum was getting somewhere in the region of 30 scam letters delivered every day.
They're protecting us from new dangers that lurk online.
As soon as I transferred the money and I saw my account say zero, I knew.
These men and women make up the UK's enforcement teams, our defenders. Today, our defenders crack down on a haulage boss whose lorry causes an horrific fatal crash.
I would describe his business as lawless. He did everything he could possibly do to circumvent the regulations.
They discover evidence that a block of flats is a potential death trap.
The builder sent a fake invoice to indicate that windows had been purchased and installed when in fact they hadn't been changed at all.
And they investigate a cowboy builder with a never-ending supply of excuses.
Relatives were randomly dying, he had to attend funerals, there were family disasters, and we did start getting to the point of thinking he was going to run out of family members or friends.
Britain's roads and motorways are among the safest in the world. Heavy goods vehicles in particular are supposed to meet strict safety standards. In most cases, they do. But this HGV, transporting a static caravan along the busy M62, is making its final journey. Its brakes are defective. It's not fit to be on the road. And it's about to swerve out of control, straight into the path of oncoming traffic.
These are really big, heavy, dangerous vehicles, and when they're out of control, then other road users are at the utmost risk. And that can mean a fatality, it can mean serious injuries, it can mean that a loved one doesn't come home that evening.
2 men lost their lives in this horrific crash. One of them was 37-year-old John Paul Cassidy from Coventry.
He was amazing. We always said he was too good to be true.
John Paul's parents, Claire and John Cassidy, are struggling to come to terms with their loss.
Growing up, he was caring. He had many friends. He was just a joy. He was special.
We did an awful lot together. He's just an absolutely fantastic guy, young man and full of life.
John Paul was planning to marry his fiancée, Lucy.
I would say he was the happiest he'd ever been. They'd bought a house. He worked so hard on it all through the summer. Really knocked it about, renovated it, and it was just completed. And his plans for his wedding in 2019, everything was booked. And he was happy in his job, really looking forward to the future.
The 3rd of April, 2018, 9:30 in the morning. John Paul and a work colleague were travelling from Manchester eastbound along the M62.
He was on his way to Hull for a meeting. Normally he would have been driving, but one of the bosses said, "I'm going that way, why don't we car share?"
They were well into their journey when tragedy struck. A huge transporter carrying a static caravan smashed through the central reservation straight into the path of oncoming traffic. John Paul suffered catastrophic head injuries and was airlifted to hospital. His colleague died instantly. News of the horrific crash was reported on BBC Look North throughout the day.
A fatal crash has completely closed the motorway in and out of East Yorkshire for most of the day.
The westbound carriageway is now open, but you can see that police are still dealing with the incident that occurred on the eastbound carriageway at around about 9:30 this morning. And of course, with investigations continuing, this will still take some time to clear.
Claire and John saw the news, but had no idea their son had been caught up in it and was fighting for his life.
Well, we heard about 6:30 that evening. I saw an accident on the news, but never related it. I saw a line of traffic where the road had been closed all day, but didn't register. I suppose it just goes over your head. And then about 10 minutes later, I had a phone call from Lucy saying, "We think John Paul's been in an accident." And I said, "What do you mean we think?" And she said, "Well, they won't give any names until we go to the hospital to identify him."
Eventually got to Hull about, wasn't far off midnight.
We got to the hospital, spoke to the nurse. John Paul was unconscious. They'd operated on him twice that day. The nurse took us in to see John Paul, which I was dreading, because you know when it's a car accident, you expect to see the worst. His head took the whole impact, and it was brain injury. The surgeon came to see us about 3 hours later and said, "He's a very sick man. We don't know if he's going to pull through." That was the devastating news we got.
We held his hands and spoke to him and all these things you do, you know.
It's not something I would ever want to relive, to be honest. Just seeing him lying there, we just prayed every day that, you know, the outcome would be different.
9 days later, John Paul lost his fight for life.
In the end, they said, you know, they tried everything. They did every test. There was no response. And he actually passed away 2:05 on the 12th of April.
I was with him when he was born into the world, and I was with him when he died. Lucy was there, came out of the room, and we just cried and hugged.
It was very hard, very, very hard to think you're not going to see your son again.
Later, the haulage boss whose gross negligence was responsible for John Paul's death.
He knew those brakes were faulty. He knew that the truck was in a dangerous condition, and he's let that vehicle go onto the road purely for financial gain.
The number of complaints about cowboy builders and rogue traders is on the rise. Whether it's flooded gardens, leaking roofs,
the water drops coming through here dangerously, it's in the light switch as well,
or jobs left unfinished. Our defenders are investigating tens of thousands of complaints every year. Among the worst in southwest England is this man, Mark Buck.
He really was motivated by money, just getting continually new funds in. He didn't seem to have any empathy with the real distress he was causing a lot of people.
Buck left scores of victims in his wake, some of them tens of thousands of pounds out of pocket. Jo Clues has devoted her life to being a mum, not only to her own children, but also to a succession of foster children.
I became a foster carer because I had 2 kids of my own and I had a spare room, and I just figured, well, you know, we could help other kids have a better life.
Over the years, Jo and husband Rick have looked after more than 50 foster children.
It's never a dull moment in our lives.
By June 2019, they badly needed more space.
The plan was always to extend the kitchen out because there's quite a few of us in the house and to add an extra bedroom and bathroom.
An architect drew up plans for a single-storey extension. The next step was to find someone to do the job. Jo and Rick got several quotes, including one from local builder Mark Buck.
We had a few recommendations. We also got some quotes from other people, but Mark was the one that came in on a price that the architect quoted. He seemed quite reasonable, quite professional, very approachable. It did seem like he knew exactly what he was doing.
Jo decided to check for any bad reviews online, just in case.
The websites and things we looked at, they were quite positive, and we felt that, yeah, he was worth going with.
What Jo didn't realise was that Mark Buck had been using several different identities. He'd called himself Mark Budd, Mark Bailey, and Mark Brown, and had many different company names, all of which helped hide the fact that he'd already racked up a succession of complaints. Sarah Smith leads a trading standards team investigating rogue trading and scams across South Wales.
So we see quite often that road builders and cowboy builders will change their names or change the trading and company names quite often, especially if they've been prosecuted or had legal action taken against them previously. And that's basically to avoid being identified. They're going to be this person now, and the other person is not going to come to light, and they can rip someone else off.
Mark Buck quoted £29,000 for the job and asked for an upfront deposit of £5,800. Jo paid up and work got underway.
In the first week, literally, they tore the back garden apart. They had all the footings dug out. They had concrete on order and coming in. It seemed everything was progressing really fast and really well, which gave us confidence to give him money for more materials.
But then, they hit a problem.
Unfortunately, the drains really seemed to stump them. They had no idea what to do with the drainage. We had a swimming pool outside. We had like a 4 metre by 8 metre swimming pool. And these guys kept coming out and they were draining all the water out on a daily basis because it kept raining. And then they started digging holes to try and work out where to put the drains.
Mark Buck's builders, seen here working at another property, seemed clueless. Jo decided to go online and work it out for herself.
In the end, I was YouTubing what to do and pointing them in the right direction, what to do with the drains and in what direction they should be.
Jo found a YouTube video explaining exactly how to lay the underground drains.
And today we're going to start excavating down here for our new inspection chamber here.
Jo followed the advice on the YouTube clip and gave Mark Buck's builders step-by-step instructions.
Got all that backfilled now as well, so all the pea gravel's in. All we've got to do now is tidy up and go home.
YouTube's useful for all sorts of DIY tips. I use YouTube for everything. It's amazing. You can find out how to do anything on YouTube.
Eventually, the drains were sorted. But by now, Mark Buck was hardly ever on site.
He started making excuses not to turn up. Relatives were randomly dying. He had to attend funerals. There were family disasters. There was a friend of his daughter's that apparently died. The vans broke down. There was some old lady that got run over. They had to take to hospital. It was just a string of excuses.
You think they can't possibly come up with something else, and the lies and the excuses carry on. But for the consumer, they're in that, you know, really vulnerable position. So they will have quite often handed over quite a large sum of money. Work may or may not have been started, or the house may not be in a condition that they can just say, oh, okay, then, you know, we'll call it a day. They're invested, and the builder knows that.
It became obvious after a short while that, yes, it was just an excuse after an excuse for not turning up. We did start getting to the point of thinking he was going to run out of family members or friends, or he was just exceptionally unlucky.
Work on the extension had begun in September. By the new year, it had come to a standstill.
Initially there was a lot of work, and then it eased off and there was dribs and drabs, and then by the January it had all come to a grinding halt. And it was me continually messaging him. Basically, Mark Buck would stay in touch with us. He did respond to many of my messages, and he continually made promises to come back and complete the work, but nothing actually happened.
Joe had paid Buck £10,000 for a kitchen that never materialised. In total, she was £32,000 out of pocket.
A lot of what had been done was substandard, and we'd been left in a heck of a mess.
With the building work still unfinished, Joe was diagnosed with breast cancer. While she was in hospital, she received a message telling her the scaffolding was being taken down because Mark Buck hadn't paid for it.
He knew what I was going through at the time, and he basically had no sympathy whatsoever and didn't try to make any effort to improve the situation.
Later, our defenders close in on Mark Buck.
You may change your name, you may get the money paid into other people's bank accounts, you may use a variety of false names, but ultimately we will find the evidence to justify a prosecution. You will be prosecuted and you will go to jail.
Earlier, John Paul Cassidy lost his fight for life after an horrific crash on the M62. His parents were devastated.
It was very hard, very, very hard to think you're not going to see your son again.
And it was just great to be in his company, and just a fantastic young man, you know, and loved him to bits, and still do.
Back in April 2018, Paul Berryman was a traffic enforcement manager at the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency.
I'm very passionate about road safety in the UK. It's the reason the DVSA exists.
Paul is our defender.
The best bit about my job is knowing you've taken a dangerous vehicle or a dangerous driver off the road.
Paul led the DVSA's investigation into the crash that claimed John Paul's life.
Regarding heavy goods vehicles and passenger carrying vehicles, buses and that sort of thing, safety is absolutely paramount. If you've got an incident involving a heavy goods vehicle, then the consequences are always far worse than with just a car, for instance. Just purely the weight and speed of the thing.
Dashcam footage revealed how the 40-ton HGV, carrying a large static caravan, had smashed through the central reservation into the path of an oncoming car. Both the driver and John Paul, the passenger, were killed.
I was shown the footage and it is absolutely horrific. I don't think I've ever seen anything that illustrates a collision, a catastrophic collision, in as much clarity. There's debris spread across both carriageways, but primarily across the eastbound carriageway. with mud from the centre reservation, bits of car, bits of truck, and it just absolute devastation.
The first stage of the investigation was to examine the transporter and find out what caused it to career so badly out of control.
We have post-collision examiners who were specialist trained to go and investigate the mechanics of the incident, and they will investigate down to the nth level.
Vehicle examiners made a shocking discovery. The HGV's braking system was defective, causing it to jackknife. It should never have been on the road. Marion Kitson is the Director of Enforcement at the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency.
Those vehicles can be up to 44 tonnes in weight. So behind the cab there is 44 tonnes. And so if that is going down the road and that vehicle is unsafe, the consequences can be unimaginable. It's really, really important that operators and drivers of these heavy goods vehicles follow the requirements for the maintenance regimes. They need to be done regularly, they need to be recorded, and then if faults are found, they need to be repaired.
The 40-ton transporter's dashcam was recording from the moment it set off that morning. It was one of a fleet of vehicles operated by haulage boss Michael Holgate.
Michael Holgate was known to me as an examiner over a lot of years. I've investigated his businesses, and he was a poor operator.
That was close.
He was on our radar as being an operator of interest. I was actually carrying out an investigation into the Holgate group of companies at the time of the accident.
Paul visited Holgate's business and seized paperwork going back 18 months. He was shocked by what he discovered.
It was apparent within a matter of hours that there was a problem with the maintenance side of the operation.
Holgate was running a negligent, potentially dangerous business. Problems with defective tyres and brakes were being ignored, and profits were being put before safety.
I would describe his business as lawless. He did everything he could possibly do to circumvent the regulations, from maintenance to driver's hours to record keeping to furnishing us with fraudulent receipts. He could not have done anything else more wrong than he did. And it's a serious business.
It was a culture of not following the rules, a culture of cutting corners, and my investigators got to the heart of that and realised that what he should have been doing, he was not doing. He was not fixing the vehicles when they were shown to be unroadworthy. And the consequences of that were these dreadful, dreadful fatalities.
There was evidence Holgate put pressure on drivers to carry on driving, even when it was unsafe to do so.
I think Holgate had a very aggressive attitude towards his drivers. He was the one that would ring the drivers and bully them into continuing to drive when they run out of hours, or bully them to take a vehicle out when its tyres wanted changing, or bully them to continue to drive when the brakes had been reported as faulty.
On the dashcam footage, driver Jack Beston can be heard talking about the lorry's defective braking system.
When I'm braking, my front wheels are going all over.
Beston had reported the faulty braking system 9 times. Holgate took no action.
He knew those brakes were faulty. He knew that the truck was in a dangerous condition, and he's let that vehicle go onto the road purely for financial gain.
Swear to God, my trailer breaks down.
On the morning of the crash, Beston mentioned problems with his brakes on 7 separate occasions. The dashcam evidence was crucial. It helped prove both the driver and his boss, Michael Holgate, knew the brakes were defective. The terrible result of that negligence was captured by dashcam on board a second transporter, travelling just behind the one with defective brakes. We see a Mini overtake. Then, moments later, the brakes lock and the driver loses control.
We could see and hear the fact that the driver knew and had reported the faults. From an enforcement point of view, the fact that they knew that the brakes were faulty, the fact that the driver knew the vehicle wasn't safe to use, and the fact that the driver and the operator let that vehicle go onto a motorway with other drivers, it just doesn't bear thinking about.
The great majority of road users, of operators of these large vehicles, do follow the rules. And so what is important for me and for my teams is that we support those that follow the rules by clamping down on those that don't.
At Hull Crown Court, Michael Holgate was convicted of 2 counts of manslaughter through gross negligence. He was jailed for 15 years.
The tragedy would have been avoidable if Holgate had run his operation legally. If he'd run it properly, from driver defect reporting to workshop maintenance audits to test driving the vehicles before they went back out on the road, it would have been completely avoidable.
Driver Jack Beston got 6 years for causing death by dangerous driving.
The sentences they got, I think, show the industry that the DVSA and the police are really serious about going forwards with prosecutions for blatant breaches of road safety regulation.
It's really, really important for me that the people in the industry understand their obligations. When we are talking about maintenance checks, they need to be done on a regular basis. That's the requirement of their operator's licence.
I hold Michael Holgate fully responsible for what happened to our son.
Holgate is definitely putting profit above health and safety and people's lives. Yes, he is doing that because he's done it. He did it in the case of our son.
I don't think any sentence could possibly help the family get over the grief of losing a loved one in a horrific collision like this. The DVSA and police have done their best to get something done for the victims. All we do is road safety based. Anything we do, our whole reason is road safety and making the roads a safer place for every road user.
We've seen in previous episodes what happens when fire regulations are ignored.
Just for the people who know Exton Square, where I live, this is how it looks like after the fire of yesterday. This is the stairs to our apartment. Beneath here, it started, this apartment, in the living room.
Max Crane was one of 17 people rescued when fire ripped through this 5-story block of flats.
Here's the door. I don't see the door, I don't know where it is, but this is my room, or what's left of my room. Just be careful when you come up.
Fire investigators were shocked to discover there wasn't a single fire alarm in the entire block of flats. The place was a death trap.
This flat's a 5-bedroom, this flat. Yeah, and no smoke detectors. No smoke. No. I mean, this is really serious. Yeah.
Our defenders are cracking down on anyone who puts lives at risk by ignoring fire safety standards.
Building regulations are designed to protect the structure of the building, make sure it doesn't fall down, make sure it's built to approved standards. And key important to that is the fire safety of the building in terms of preventing the spread of fire and allowing people to escape from fire.
Paul Gander is Southwark's Trading Standards team leader. Paul is our defender.
We've seen how important that is in recent years with the terrible Grenfell incident and other incidents in the past.
This South London block of flats was due to have 3 new fire safety windows installed in 3 separate bedrooms. The idea was the new windows would stand up to the fire, giving residents sufficient time to evacuate the building.
The importance of these fire safety windows were about protecting the means of escape. The fire had to be contained within the flat. If smoke came out of the windows, it would get into vents in a very nearby escape route corridor.
The upgraded windows would have a 60-minute rating, meaning they'd withstand extreme heat for at least an hour.
The fire-rated window will not shatter for some time when subject to heat. Depending on how it's constructed, you might have a 30 or a 60 or a 90-minute rated window.
Thanks for the dates, that's helpful.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, bye.
A building control officer was assigned to make sure the work was carried out correctly.
The building control officer was very keen to see that the windows met the required standard.
Valeriu Sandu, the builder, sent the building control team an invoice, apparently showing he'd purchased 3 fire safety windows. But something didn't add up.
On site, the windows did not match that specification at all.
In fact, the window frames had air vents and were not fit for purpose.
When she arrived on site, she was presented with some Georgian glass windows, and from her experience and knowledge, she immediately suspected that they may not be up to standard.
The details on the invoice didn't match what the building officer had seen with her own eyes.
Having seen the windows on site, the building control officer decided to make inquiries with the manufacturer that the builder had purported to have got the windows from.
The manufacturer confirmed the building inspector's worst fears. The invoice was bogus.
What actually happened was the builder sent a fake invoice to indicate that windows had been purchased and installed when in fact they hadn't been changed at all.
Sandu's deception didn't end there.
Mr. Sandu compounded his fraud by then seeking to pull the wool over our building control officer's eyes by faking an email.
The email, again apparently from the manufacturer, stated that the existing windows could be adapted.
When the building control officer received this email, she immediately realised that was not right either. And again, the company concerned confirmed that that email had not come from them at all. And in fact, the person who was supposed to have sent it was on leave the day it was sent.
Paul and his team took over the investigation because of the experience they have in dealing with scams and fake documents.
The council decided it was a very high priority case to investigate and deal with. Building control came to us for expertise in interviewing the defendant and dealing with the fraudulent invoices.
If Sandu had got away with this, he could have made an easy £8,000 profit. But the cost in the event of a fire was potentially catastrophic.
The builder puts his own payment ahead of the safety of the occupants of the building. He was keen to get approval and paid for his works, and after that, who knows what would have happened.
Sandu pleaded guilty to 2 fraud offences. In January 2022, he was given a 12-month jail sentence, suspended for 15 months.
When people seek to deceive regulators, they must be taken to court and punished accordingly. He could have gone to prison, and if he commits further offence in that time, he will go to prison.
Thanks to our defenders, the correct fire safety windows have now been installed.
Building control and trading standards are all out there to defend public safety in various ways, and in this case we work together to ensure that this builder, who tried to pull the wool over our building control officer's eyes by submitting fake invoices, was brought to justice.
Joe Clues paid builder Mark Buck £32,000 for a new extension, but the work was never finished. When Joe was diagnosed with cancer, Buck continued to fob her off.
You go through life expecting people to be fairly reasonable, and it's a real shocking reality when you find out how much you have been conned and that people can actually be that nasty.
Joe wasn't alone. More than 70 people from across the southwest complained about Buck. Trading standards officers at several local councils were alerted.
We all do see ourselves as defenders. You know, we are here to look after the rights of the public, and if they've been scammed or ripped off, we're here to protect them from that.
Francis Chalk is part of the National Trading Standards Regional Investigations Team.
Mark Buck was trading across a fairly small area to start off with. It was Bath Council, South Gloucestershire, North Somerset, places like that. But towards the end of it, he actually moved across the bridge and was offending on a number of occasions in Wales.
The complaints showed a clear pattern of behaviour.
Very often Mr. Buck would put pressure on people by saying, you know, I've had a cancellation, I can fit you in the next couple of weeks. So he's putting pressure on people to make a quick decision. Quite a few people have described him as pushy, and again you could see those big upfront payments being made. Honest, reputable traders, they're booked up months and months in advance, and it's always slightly suspicious if someone can say to you, oh well, I can start the next day or I can start next week. You know, that's when alarm bells should start ringing, really.
In each case, Buck had taken thousands of pounds off victims and left the job unfinished. In some cases, like Joe's, he took money for kitchens, doors and windows, but they never materialised. The little work he did carry out was shoddy.
Some of the work that Mr. Buck did was completely and utterly dreadful. We've got an example where someone had him build a new wall. It was a bit windy one day and the wall fell over. Another lady who, when he was working on her house, the kitchen ceiling fell in, and that was a direct result of the work he was doing on her property. I've seen people whose properties have basically been destroyed by him, completely gutted, and he's not finished the work.
Francis called in a surveyor to value Buck's handiwork.
We've had 2 or 3 jobs of his surveyed. They've all been found to be of poor quality. Quite often people have paid, in one instance they paid £40,000. The surveyor said the job was worth 20. Someone else paid about £20,000. The job was said to be worth £2,500.
Mark Buck was a serial con artist who traded under several different names.
There was I Build For You, MB Construction, Ashlar SW Limited. Nowadays it's very easy to go online and find some information about a trader, whether they're a rogue or not. A lot of people, once they've had a lot of complaints against one name, they just trade it into another name.
Buck hid his fraud by concealing money in many different bank accounts.
Mr. Buck was bankrupt twice, so he, after a while, didn't have his own bank accounts. And at the last count, my colleague, who's a financial investigator, had found that there had been 30 different bank accounts that Mr. Buck had got money paid into, friends, family members, employees. So that was a way of him hiding where the money was going to.
The financial investigations produced damning evidence.
After we had spoken to people like building control, the official receiver for his bankruptcy, architects, a whole gamut of other organisations, we had enough evidence to then confidently say that Mr. Buck was a rogue trader. You know, he was breaking the law.
Buck was one of the worst builders Somerset had ever seen. Complaints continued to flood in. A Facebook group was created by his victims called the Mark Buck Survivors Group. It had more than 200 members.
There's an element of there being strength in numbers for the victims. You know, if they see other comments online or on social media, they're more perhaps willing or likely to also come forward themselves, knowing that there's other people out there. Or they've been a victim, so I'm going to tell my story as well.
In some ways, it was kind of reassuring to know that we weren't the only gullible people on the planet, and it was nice to have other people to basically feel supported, that we were all in the same boat.
Our defenders knew they had to stop Buck. So in August 2021, they took drastic action.
It seemed to be escalating. The numbers of people were increasing, the amounts of money was going up and up, and he just wasn't stopping. And that was why eventually, you know, we had to ask the court to remand him in custody just to protect the public, really.
While in custody, Buck pleaded guilty to fraudulent trading. In December 2021, he was jailed for 5 years.
5 years for a trading standards case is a significant sentence, there's no doubt about that. When they are given the correct sentence, it does feel good, you know, because that's what we're here for. You know, we are here to put the bad guys away.
Thank you for taking such an interest and taking this on and ending Mark Buck's working career. And now we need to make sure he never gets out there again.
Joe and Rick have managed to put right the damage caused to their home. And even better news, Joe's been given the all clear from cancer.
There's lots of finishing touches to still be done. We ended up fitting the kitchen ourselves, and we've done some of the work ourselves. My nephew, very kindly, who is a builder, stepped in and completed the rest of it for us at cost price.
Mark Buck has also been issued with a criminal behaviour order, banning him from ever trading as a builder. A great result for our defenders.
Doing this job can be very rewarding. You are there to help people, you're there to help them when they have problems, and you're also there to bring justice, and hopefully it will show consumers that they've got someone in trading standards who has got their back.
Our defenders are working hard to protect us from the cowboys and the rogues who rip us off and threaten our safety. In our homes and on our roads.
I'm really, really proud of the teams that I lead. I'm incredibly proud of the passion that they show for road safety. And what I know is they make a difference to people getting home safely at the end of the day.
Police dogs, social media, high-tech cameras bring offenders to justice. Frontline Fight Back, press red to watch an iPlayer. A cruise becomes a nightmare for a wheelchair user. Rip off Britain, next.